Oh, I guess one thing I should have said was it is recording your end locally. So you'll need to keep the tab open until it finishes uploading, and it'll tell you after we end the stream. So
Okay, cool.
And before we get rolling, I also want to just say hello to all the people who will watch the stream after it's streamed, I guess is the way we would put that. All right, I'm going to get us kicked off. Hey, welcome back to another episode of the Ruby Rogues podcast. This week on our panel, we have Valentino Stoll.
Hey now.
I'm Charles Max Wood from Top End Devs. This week we have a special guest, and that is Alex. I don't have your last name in front of me. Is it Rudall?
Yeah,
I need to go look
perfect.
it up.
No, that's perfect.
All right. Do you want to introduce yourself real quick and tell everybody why you're awesome and all that good stuff?
Sure. My name's Alex. I'm a Ruby developer and have been for the last 10 years or so. I maintain the Ruby OpenAI library, and I also run a consultancy called Peace Terms.
Yeah, I saw that on your LinkedIn that you're renaming Rails AI to Peace Terms.
Mm-hmm.
I went to railsai.com and it's still there. So is it just not redirected or?
Well, I switched it because Rails is trademarked by DHH, which is fair enough. Although you can use it to write books, and I'm probably going to write a book, I think, called Rails AI.
Yeah. Oh, there you go. You'll have to let us know when that's out. And yeah, I was looking at the Ruby AI gem as well, and now I have my imposter syndrome running at high speed. Yeah, so you're doing consulting on pulling in some of these large language models for Rails apps. And I'm trying to just imagine, where you would use it. And just some of the places I've seen stuff like this is, for example, I've been using ClickFunnels lately, and you can highlight a bit of text and you can tell it to rewrite it and stuff like that. I'm assuming that's something similar to that. And I've seen chatbots. But are there other things that people are doing with the OpenAI style stuff?
Yeah, so I've been consulting around this for just the last few months, really. The main things I've seen so far are chatbots. Yeah, kind of forms like you mentioned to generate copy or edit copy. But then like pipelines for kind of knowledge retrieval, like people uploading PDFs and then you do embeddings around it, and then ask questions about that data.
I feel like, hang on. So what do you mean exactly? So if I upload like a book or something like that, then I can ask questions about it? Is that kind of what you're talking about?
Yeah. So the way it works is what you do is you break all that data down into chunks, and then put that in a kind of a vector database, which is like a number representation of that data. And OpenAI has an endpoint which will convert that for you, and then you can put that in a database and use it to quickly find the closest vector to a query.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, I interrupted you. What else are people using this for then?
That's okay. Yeah, and then there's a lot of content generation. Like it's quite big in the education field. I think a lot of teachers are finding it useful for generating questions and things for their classes. And then there's quite a few startups kind of built around that. Yeah, trying to sell to education based on AI.
Awesome. So this is something that, for example, I could take all of the transcripts of all the podcasts and feed that in there and then have it generate stuff for me.
Potentially, yeah. The thing is, yeah, I maintain the Ruby OpenAI gem. But to be honest, I wouldn't say I'm necessarily like a AI expert. like I can tell you a little bit about how I got into that, if that's
Yeah, that'd be
interesting.
awesome.
Yeah. So back in 2020, it was like a lockdown in the UK, and I was quite bored on the weekends and spending a lot of time on Hacker News, as I'm sure you guys do as well, probably. And yeah, I saw that a user called GDB had posted that he worked at OpenAI, and that they're releasing a new API, and he was looking for people to try it out with his email address. So I got in touch, and that was the CTO of OpenAI, and he kind of gave me early access. And I had this idea for a startup, which would be kind of a way to sort of fill out sales questionnaires for government procurement using AI, which was, I don't know, an okay idea. But I realized that there was no library to make it easy to do that and to work with the OpenAI API. So I ended up putting together a really basic gem to do that and release that. And then I kind of failed to continue with my startup idea, but gradually built up the gem. And I just kept like contributing to it gradually. At first, I was the only user, and then a few other people started using it and making requests, and I'd add new bits to it, and it kind of snowballed from there. And I think now it's had over 6 million downloads, and it's quite widely used, including at some big companies like Shopify and places like that. But all the way through, I was just kind of wrapping OpenAI API. So I wouldn't say I'm necessarily like an AI expert. I'm more a Ruby AI wrapper expert.
Yeah, I mean, you keep making that caveat, but the thing is that one of the beautiful things about the internet and the way that all of this stuff works is that I don't have to be an AI expert, right? I mean, it's fascinating and it's fun to dive into, but at the end of the day, you know, there's an API that I can hit that will do the thing, and then I get the result that I need, and I can build the app, and it opens up a different level of creativity, right? The AI expertise takes a certain level of creativity, don't get me wrong, but yeah, I mean, don't sell yourself short, because writing against this API and giving people the tools to kind of open up this world, that's very cool.
Yeah, thank you. One thing I'm finding is that everyone I talk to about this stuff says, "Oh, we're only doing something basic." But I think everyone is so new to a lot of this AI stuff that they all feel like they're beginners. I think one of the things I am really good at is writing documentation, and I think that was really important in the popularity of the library, because I always tried to make sure everything was documented in the README, and I tried to aim it so like a junior developer who was brand new would be able to just copy and paste a bit of code and use that. And I think that really contributed to the popularity of it, because a lot of libraries have good documentation, but often you can copy some code and it won't quite work. And I think for junior developers, that can be quite difficult.
Yeah, I will say I had a great time onboarding to this gem.
Oh, nice.
And it definitely helped. Even just thinking of like stability of the tools that you're using. Like if something works right away as is documented, like that's a great sign.
That's awesome. Thank you.
But also like it's been pretty stable. We've obviously this hasn't been a year yet, but it's coming close. But everything is still moving smooth, even though maybe the underlying stuff isn't. The shifting sands of OpenAI. But yeah, I'm curious because you have quite a few other gems here, Midjourney and Anthropic and things like that, kind of that are still AI related. I mean, have you been inspired by creating any of these things? Like, hey, maybe like here's something else cool that you can do with this thing, and how are you going about like documenting your process?
To be honest, I've wanted to work in the AI area for a long time. Like when I was younger, I wanted to be a sci-fi writer, and I wrote a sci-fi novel.
Oh, cool! Can I get my hands on that?
Yeah, you can. I can send you one, or you can find it on Amazon. It's called Inkers, Inkers. It's pretty decent. But I kind of wrote that and realized that I hate writing fiction. Find it very painful. But a lot of that book is about AI and how AI is going to destroy the world, basically. So I was like, maybe I should get into that industry. And I ended up going down this side path, kind of like my first job was Rails 3.2 or something. And then I ended up enjoying that and doing that for 10 years. But I think I've always had this thing where I wanted to work in the AI world. And I just feel like this is an opportunity for me to do that. And I was able to get access to the Anthropic Claude, and there was no gem for that, so I made one. And I made one for Midjourney as well, although Midjourney doesn't have an API yet, which I don't really understand why that is. So it's just kind of using some third-party service for now.
Yeah, that's been one of my pet peeves with all of this open or like large language model stuff. Is like it's kind of wild because everybody's adopting what OpenAI did for their API. So it all matches. It's pretty much the same.
Yeah.
Some caveats, right? Like some differences when it gets to the edges. But like for the most part, like everybody's vendor locked to this shape of the API, which is kind of wild. And so like I'm wondering, like, is there a happy medium where like, because there are services out there like Helicone or Open Router or something like that, where you can like use a bunch of models using the same interface. I mean, is there opportunity here? Like the tooling is so new, especially in the Ruby world. Like, is there opportunity here to like consolidate some of this stuff? And have you been thinking about that into your gems?
Yeah, I've thought about it a few times. I think my thing has always been to do one thing really well, or as well as I can. Like people have asked, could it support maybe other LLMs, other APIs? But I don't think I have the capacity as a volunteer necessary to do that at the standard I would want to. I do think the space is changing so quickly, and that especially with open source models, even ones you can run on your own machine, I do think they're going to become more and more popular, especially regarding cost. Like a lot of my clients want to spin up their own LLMs just to save money on the OpenAI calls, which makes sense to me. But yeah, I guess maybe a unified API would be good. But I don't know. There's LangChain RB, which is a cool gem. Andrei Bondarov makes, which does bring a lot of different LLMs together.
So I'm going to divert things a little bit here because I'm curious about what you said as far as people wanting to set up their own LLMs. So does Ruby OpenAI not do that? Is that something I'd need to use a different system for? And how would I do that?
Yeah, it doesn't really. It's not something I've done that much myself or at all, really. You can provide a different like base URL to Ruby OpenAI. So if you want to use Azure, or you could use a different source, but it's not something I have any experience of, really. This is what I'm saying about not really being a ML expert that much. But it's likely something I'm going to be getting into soon, I think.
Yeah, I've been hard pressed to find a Ruby Ruby version of something you can build locally for these open source models. It's all Python, which hopefully that changes. But
yeah, maybe I should make one.
Yeah, we did a book club book on all the machine learning tools out there, and it was in Python. But yeah, there's a lot of really, really interesting stuff going on out there in the machine learning world in general. I don't think most of these really, there was mostly like classification and stuff. It wasn't LLMs, but still. Yeah, it'd be fascinating to just kind of see how that comes together. So you would go and use some tool that allows you to feed data into your LLM and then have it build your model for you.
Potentially, yeah. Yeah, like I said,
you didn't sound sure.
I've not really played with that much. So
Okay.
that's the thing. A lot of people think I'm an expert in machine learning, which is really nice. And like I'm gradually becoming more of an expert, I guess. But yeah, I've just not done that. So
Yeah.
I think probably my main area of interest at the moment is really accessibility for people, and like how to make a library that is really useful to the most amount of people, how to manage burnout in like maintaining an open source library. I'm not sure if you guys have maintained open source libraries before, but that can be quite a challenge.
Mm-hmm.
But I think I've learned quite a few things about that.
Yeah, I'm curious. I wanted to bring up because I have been following the library pretty closely because I've been adopting it quite a lot. And so like there have been some transitions, kind of big ones in the library that may be helpful to walk through like how that all played out, because a lot of people aren't familiar with, running an open source project, even a mildly successful one, right? And so I'm curious like how that process kind of goes. Because I mean, I've joined you have a Discord server, which has been great.
Cool.
Just getting feedback, from everybody before you submit. Like that's one of the biggest downsides of GitHub issues, in my opinion, is like you ask a question and then there's just like this long form, like back and forth, which it can be nice, but when you're trying to like just gauge whether something is even, worthwhile to do, it's like kind of like a waste of time, to be honest. Whereas like if you just join a chat and you're like, is this something you want to do? You just say no, and like that's it, and it drops off the history, right? Like you don't have to close it. There's no cleanup, like so that's been great. But like so as an example, under the hood, you had kind of just been using like I forget, some Ruby HTTP library. I forget which one it was. And then you made a pretty pivotal change to like Faraday. And I think that was to support streaming requests. And so like, how does a transition like that work from like an owner of the repository, right? Like, how do you decide you want to do that? And then do you just make the decision and go with it and hope that it doesn't break for everybody? Like, how does that whole thing work out?
Yeah, that has definitely been a learning curve for me. I think it helped that the library did grow quite gradually in popularity. So early on, there was no one except me using it. And then there were just a few core users who actually contributed a lot, but that was very manageable, and they were all quite good and kind of expert developers, a lot of them a lot smarter than me, a lot better developers than me. I think what I've always tried to do is follow demand. So if someone requests something, I don't do it straight away. Like I'll try and hear from other people, wait for more people to demand that, even sometimes wait for people to like angrily demand changes, because then it's like, okay, then there's really a problem and they really need something. And after that, try and ask for PRs from people who are better developers than me. Often there'll be like two main PRs for a big change that different people have done, and that can be really good for like comparing the advantages and disadvantages. Yeah, switching to Faraday, that was probably the biggest decision. Again, I always try and prioritize usability, and I want to make it as easy as possible for junior developers to use. And Faraday seems like probably the widest used HTTP library, maybe the best documented, the most flexible. We looked at some other ones like Typhus, which could have had some advantages in terms of performance. But yeah, in the end, I settled on that one. I think it's important not to get into arguments, really. Like I definitely take as much input as I can. But in the end, I need to make a decision. And then, there's no point arguing really. Like other people are free to make forks, which plenty of people do. And I try and limit breaking changes as much as possible and kind of bundle them together. Although we're already on version 6 now, so there's been quite a few at this point. But still, I try to really limit breaking changes. I really like think testing is very important as well. There's a good test suite. I use VCR, and before I do any release, I run the test suite against the live API to make sure everything works, and I have a kind of test project that I test the gem in as well, because I don't want to break it for thousands of people.
Yeah, it's really funny you mentioned that because of how difficult it is to kind of test these stupid text streams. For one, I guess kind of just like the lack of ubiquitous support in general for them. But two, they're spotty, right? Like you could have something like start and then just wait and hang there for a little and then come back with something that maybe it shouldn't, at times. But the protocol itself, it works as expected, but the response doesn't. And so
Yeah.
how do you kind of like, do you just keep adding tests as they come up kind of thing, or is there kind of just like all right, we're not going to add any more like conditions to this, like if it breaks at those edges, like that's not really our problem.
I try and add a good amount of tests for confidence. But yeah, stuff like around streaming and SSE and stuff. Fortunately, I had some really good Shopify engineers do some contributions recently. A guy called Ates, and he made like a separate gem to help with SSE parsing, which I just didn't really understand properly, I think, and that solved a lot of problems with it. So I think just leaning on better developers than you and knowing when to accept their contributions is really important. Like you can't write aspect tests for all the edge cases at all. That's just to make sure I'm not breaking anything too important, I think. Yeah, and then always doing a manual check just to make sure it does actually work.
Yeah, that's fair. And I mean, it kind of brings me to my next point, like kind of the lack of tooling available for this specific kind of I guess behavior. It's like, in the Ruby, it's kind of like a different way to program Ruby in a way, right? Where it's a lot of async stuff, but not necessarily. It's still like synchronous, and so it does take a kind of a bit different, like because there's so long of a request, right, for a lot of things. Like let's say you want to break down a file, if you want to do Q&A on something, like there's a whole bunch of front loading you have to do to make sure that's indexable, right? And there's like long processes involved in a lot of this stuff. And so latency obviously is a huge issue if you're not doing it right. And so I don't know, it's been hard for it's hard for me as a Ruby developer to kind of like grapple with all of the different ways that you kind of have to frame your thinking. Have you found that this is like a common pattern, and like are there any like tools that help like reason about it better?
Yeah, I actually built one this week for a client. If you're talking about kind of judging the quality of the responses you're getting back from the LLM, because I think that is a new paradigm, because in a way there's a lot of different correct answers that you could get back from the LLM. So that's quite different to writing software where you want to get the same thing back every time, obviously.
Right.
But the tool I built, there's various ones. OpenAI has their own one called evals, which is a way of
Python.
using. It's Python. Yeah, I think there is a Ruby implementation, but I think in LangChain there is. But I just built my own structure this week to sort of run a bunch of the inputs that we know we want to run with a fixed set of data, to kind of just test the quality of the responses, and it just uses ChatGPT to kind of give a grade of how good that response is. So I think there is a huge tooling gap there, to be honest. I think all this stuff is so new and developing so fast, but I think as a community, we will need to come up with tools, probably using AI to test the AI, if you see what I mean. Yeah. it's a whole new world.
That's really funny. Somebody just posted in one of our channels today. It was like an internet meme of like oh, AI, I'm the latest AI, and I fully understand, and can outperform humans, and humans interacting with me is like a human interacting with a chicken, and then it's like, now I'm looking up how humans treat chickens so I can better interface with you.
Yeah, I gotta be honest, having worked with these LLMs quite a bit, I'm not currently too worried about them taking over the world. I'm just not at the moment. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but I think they're powerful tools. But
there's still so much hand-holding.
Yeah, they just get so much wrong, and humans still have all the power. We hold all the keys and all that. Yeah.
So what's your next step here? I just foresee another gem coming out,
Right.
You've got to have something in the works, right?
Maybe, yeah. I do really like making gems. Maybe one around testing the quality of the feedback you're getting could be cool. But also, they do take quite a lot of time to maintain. So, and yeah, trying to start this consulting business at the same time. Maybe I should focus on that. Yeah.
So what is that? What is that balance like? I mean, I've worked for a consultancy before. I haven't run my own, and it is a lot of work, just finding clients. I know that.
Yeah.
So how do you find the balance for like clients, searching for clients, working for clients, and then also like supporting all your open source work, right? Like, are you finding like a good groove now, or is there just like a never ending? I gotta weigh one over the other at any moment?
Yeah, that's been a challenge. To be honest, I've got a really good funnel. Like quite a lot of people use Ruby OpenAI, and I have a little advert in there. Yeah, people can click to see my website. And I've spent a bit of time building a bit of a Twitter/X profile as well, kind of in the Ruby community and Discord. So actually, I have a good funnel, and I think because people have seen my work on Ruby OpenAI, they trust me. Enough to have a conversation with. So that part is good. Yeah, I'm trying to figure out the model for delivering. Like, I've been doing something called a productized dev service where people pay a flat rate every month, and then I kind of try and do as much work as I can for each client. But I started off charging really cheap, like $500 a month, and had 7 clients. Yeah, that nearly killed me. I kind of like came out in hives, which I've never had from stress. But yeah, that's pretty stupid. But a lot of people warned me that was not a good idea, but I'm quite stubborn with things like that. So I've now reduced my clients down to 4 and raised my prices quite a lot, which is working a lot better. Yeah, honestly, I love doing open source work, and I'd love to do that for a living, I think. But yeah, it doesn't pay that well financially speaking. Although it is very worthwhile doing open source work. Like, the feedback I get from a lot of people is really nice, mostly, and that's really, really rewarding.
Yeah, it was great to see. What was it? Ruby Central finally getting a heavy sponsor, AWS backing the Ruby Gems, full-time security engineer.
I didn't see that.
So I mean, it's possible. It's starting to get there. I know Amazon, that they surprisingly do. They just bankroll a bunch of open source people to make sure they stay secure enough for all of their different services, which is kind of funny. Well, hopefully that expands more, because we could certainly use more of it in Ruby for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, there's those memes about all these huge corporations just sort of running on the back of just these like gems that are developed by some random guy like me. But there is some truth to that, I think.
Well,
so
you
that
said
Amazon,
Shopify is using your stuff. and they're
Yes.
what, $1.5 billion company or something. So yeah.
Yes, they are. Yeah.
Dear Shopify sponsor Alex.
Right?
Yeah, I would welcome sponsorship from major corporations. That would be cool.
Yeah, definitely get some of that Shopify money. It's funny that Shopify's come up because I literally signed up for Shopify yesterday. So anyway.
I'm interested what you guys think about Ruby in general. Like, I listened to one of your older episodes today about is Ruby dying from like 2016 or something. And everyone was like, no, it's not. I do wonder, like, Python seems to be kind of in the lead, especially in the AI world. Like, I love Ruby and I love writing it and working in it. So I guess that's why I'm quite committed to it. But yeah.
I've got a lot of opinions here.
Yeah, same. I think we should probably keep it somewhat to, futuristic or future-looking technologies like AI.
Okay.
As far as the opinions go,
Sure.
just because I do want to kind of keep it on topic, but yeah, it's kind of an interesting place, and you kind of, I think your website's Rails AI, and so we kind of get into that too. And Rails, I think, has made some major strides in becoming or remaining relevant. And so, pulling in, Ruby OpenAI or something else that allows you to connect to some of these APIs and things like that. And I think this is the same in general for things like Node.js and whatever, is if you can connect to something that will do what you need, or you can use an open source thing that will do what you need, then it doesn't, it matters less and less and less what your primary language is. So then it's just a matter of, what's the right tool for the job, right? And so, to the point that I made earlier, if we're talking about, AI and whether or not we should have imposter syndrome around building our own AI engines and whether or not we're doing that in Ruby, it may not matter, right? What may matter is that we can pull in what we need. We can get the models built that we need. We don't have to be complete experts in the soup to nuts implementation. And right. And so then we can write the logic that makes sense to write in Ruby. And then, yeah, if you go down the line to get into ML ops or things like that, and, data munging and all that stuff, then yeah, you may wind up doing some of that in Python, which I don't know that that's a bad thing. I think in my world, yeah, I'd prefer to do it in Ruby, but I don't know. I don't think it's going to be as big a deal as people make it out to be, unless you're in the thick of building your models yourself. So as far as the rest of it goes, again, it's just where the utilities are for what you're trying to use it for. And so, Rails, like I said, has made major strides forward in being a relevant option going forward on web development. And, Ruby continues to, innovate and, gain speed and concurrency and things like that in areas that matter to people who are trying to build stuff with it. So I think the future for it looks good.
Yeah, I'd agree.
I agree with that too. I mean, I would add on, like, I liken this whole wave, like, kind of to some of the earlier Ruby tooling, where, as an example, like build tooling didn't exist before Rake, right, for Ruby. And then Jim Werik made Rake, and then build tooling was just like possible, and so many things happened. And we kind of haven't seen like machine learning get adopted on a mass scale, kind of like some of this other tooling is. And we are seeing quite a lot more like machine learning specific Ruby stuff come out now that people are getting more involved, and they're like, well, I want to do this in Ruby. How do we make that happen, kind of thing. And I have a feeling we'll start to see a new wave come about from that. And I think it's really just a matter of time, because of the, you mentioned like user experience in your gems. Like that's true of the language itself. So like, there are plenty of tools available in Python. People will use Python until they don't want to use it anymore, right? And if you start to like, if you're a Rubyist and like you're familiar with all of the benefits of using Ruby as a language, just making some new tooling can drastically change your lifestyle if you're familiar with it, right? And so I think we'll see a lot more of that start to pan out, and that's where I think. I mean, I don't. Ruby is by far not dead. I have had a job for quite a long time and still see plenty of open availability in Ruby. That's kind of how I gauge it personally, but like I think it's just a matter of preference at this point, and the tooling is really not that far of a gap. So like there's more in Python, but like Python's still missing a lot too, so
Yeah. Well, going into the use case thing again, I mean, you see people, a lot of the machine learning stuff's done in like Jupyter notebooks and things like that. Where if you get a really large model, Jupyter is no longer really a good option. But if you're playing around, it works really nice. That said, you don't see people building big apps in Django. I mean, they're out there, but not like what you're seeing people do in Rails, right? And then depending on what people are building, our biggest show on Top End Devs is JavaScript Jabber, and a lot of people are doing stuff in Next and things like that. But again, there are some things where it's just really nice to have a solid, well-built back end that does kind of the minimal amount of stuff and then makes the other stuff easy. And I think Rails nails that. And so I think it is a case-by-case basis, and then making the right call on what technology you use.
Yeah,
I will
I'd agree
say
with that.
you can also run Ruby on Jupyter notebooks.
Really?
Oh, really?
Using SciRuby's iRuby kernel. It's pretty great.
Did not know that.
I'll have to check that out.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you guys. I think there is right now this big gap in between the APIs and the LLMs and the business end of things. And I think Ruby and Rails is a really good language for business logic and for quickly building prototypes for business. So I definitely see a future for Rails and AI. But I would say that.
Yeah. Well, the other thing is that the things that make Python really good for some of this stuff, there's no reason why we couldn't build a lot of those functions and features into a Ruby library that we then import. And so, where you have SciPy and I can't remember the math Python library, but you've got those pieces, and they basically build down to a C or, other implementation. I don't see why you couldn't do a Ruby FFI to Rust or C or C++ and then make it work. The thing is that it would take a lot of work to get that done. And I know some people have started some of that work, but we're a ways out from having it in Ruby where they already have it in Python.
100%.
So Alex, I'm kind of curious. I think I saw something on LinkedIn that said that you'd picked up like 4 clients. I don't know how much you can tell us about what you're doing for them, but I'd really like to get an idea of, okay, what are people paying consultants for to get AI into their apps? So as much as you can tell us, what can you tell us?
Yeah, I can sort of tell broad strokes because I've had quite a few clients as well over the past few months. And a lot of people want to build forms that their users can put answers to questions in, and then that gets sent to OpenAI with a prompt, and then it comes back. That's it really. Like, it is not basic, but it's quite simple. And then there's the more advanced stuff, which is like kind of data pipelines for knowledge retrieval. It's probably the other big use case. It really feels like people are just trying to figure out the best way to use this stuff. Like, it's clear that there's a lot of value. And to be honest, I do think that within like 3 or 4 years, most apps will have some LLM either embedded in them, or they'll be doing calls out to an API. That kind of seems inevitable to me now, but it's just so early, and we're just kind of figuring out how to do that in a good, safe way that adds value to the user. It doesn't just annoy them. Like a lot of the chat bots that we've had over the years just basically annoy people, it seems like. Yeah. How do we not do that?
Right. So a couple of things I'm just going to ask you in a little more detail. So, and I'm just kind of scrolling through the OpenAI gem, so it looks like chat's one of the functions here. You kind of mentioned that, right? It's, hey, ask a question, and it formulates it into a prompt and then gets it back, gets back a response, and right, you send it through. It looks like you can also have it do some kind of like identifying stuff in images. You can have it generate images.
Mm-hmm.
Are you into any of that stuff, or are you mostly in? Or you can also have it like transcribe. Ooh, that's cool. Makes me kind of. I'm always looking for new ways to do stuff with the podcast, but yeah. So the speech to text. So yeah, so those kinds of things. Are you doing anything with those, or is it mostly just kind of on the chat level?
It's almost all text and embeddings. Okay. The work I'm doing. The ability to identify things in images, that's only come out in the last month or so, I think.
Okay.
So that's quite new. I think that's so powerful, especially from an accessibility point of view. I think that's a really big deal. But yeah, I've not seen it used that widely with my clients. Okay. Yeah.
But the image generation?
Yeah. People tend to use that for decoration more than, so just kind of putting a nice image at the top, something like that, in what I've seen. But the audio, the kind of text to speech is so good. I don't know if you tried that. It's so good.
It's surprisingly
I haven't.
fast. It was a lot faster than I thought it would be.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right now I'm using Cast Magic. Okay. So I'm paying for. I have to pay for. I got a lifetime deal, but we have so many shows that I had to pay for extra minutes. So I'm just kind of curious how that would go. I'm also curious how much it costs, because don't you have to pay for your access to the OpenAI APIs?
Yeah, so you pay for tokens or per request.
Okay. And is it that expensive, or I'm just curious?
For transcribing text, I wouldn't think it's too expensive. It tends to get more expensive if you're sending really big chunks of text a lot.
Okay.
Which can happen pretty easily if you're not careful working with text.
Right. But I could, for example, just upload. I guess that would be a big chunk, because our audio files get kind of large sometimes.
Could be worth a try.
Yeah. Well, the thing that I'm imagining is that it'd be really nice to be able to have my team effectively upload the audio file and then have it just generate all the stuff. So generate the transcript, generate some show notes, Anyway.
Yeah, sounds like a cool project.
Yep.
Do a summary.
Yep.
Cool. I did see through the gems pull requests that some of the agent stuff, the new agent stuff, has gotten into the gem already. Have you had a chance to like play around with any of that yet, or is there anything worthwhile in there?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's probably the future of the API, to be honest. I think it is very new. What I've used so far, like, you can give it files, you can make an assistant and give it files, and it will do embeddings on them on the OpenAI side, I think. And then you can ask questions about them. I think right now it can probably, I'm not too sure, but I think it could be quite expensive. But I suspect that will change very quickly. Yeah, I think kind of OpenAI kind of combining features together like that is probably the future. And I suspect we'll end up with more APIs that can do multimodal input and output like that. Yeah, it seems very powerful.
Yeah, I'm just I'm waiting for the day where it can just like figure it out for me.
Yeah.
I point at a database and say, okay, use this as reference, like find what you need.
Yeah, but maybe it'll be able to do that, but it'll cost you $20 per request or something.
Yeah, for the first year.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. Well, if there's nothing else to dive into, let's tackle some picks. Valentino, you got some picks?
Yes, I did have a pick here. I'm not finding it. Let's see. What have I been up to lately? I always have to look around. Oh yeah, I guess I got a new a Mac Mini and started creating a media server out of it with Plex, which is really nice.
Mm-hmm.
Plex is fantastic. You just throw a bunch of files at it and it like makes sense of it and makes a nice UI and magically makes it available to all the devices in the house on the same network. So that has been a lot of fun and pretty painless, which is not something I'm used to with media sharing. So uh, that could be my pick is just get a tiny little Mac Mini and throw Plex on there.
Very cool.
Very cool. Yeah, a bunch of my neighbors have it set up, and I have a Mac Mini on the other desk that I put Plex on it, and I wanted to like rip all of our DVDs onto it, and that's just not been something I've gotten to. So it's cool stuff for sure. We've got a couple of picks here. I usually do a board game pick, and so I'm going to go ahead and throw out a pick for a board game that I've played recently. I'm trying to remember what we played 2 weeks ago. Last week was weird, and this week was weird, and so we didn't get together, me and my buddies. But have I picked Happy Little Dinosaurs? I don't think so. Happy Little Dinosaurs is a game. It's pretty simple game. It's not one that I would play with other adults. It's actually one that I play with my kids. And what it is you. So it's the apocalypse for the dinosaurs, right? So you have different catastrophes that are coming. So you have meteors, then you've got like red, blue, and green catastrophes. And the red, blue, and green catastrophes. So you have your hand of cards, and you play a number face down, and then you flip it over. And some of the cards have effects, and so it's like swap numbers with another player, swap two players' numbers, or play another card, or something like that, right? And so you play all that out, and then whoever has the highest or the lowest number at the end gets the catastrophe. And so then they put it on their card, and whoever played the highest number, they move up that many spots on the score tracking on their card. And if you get three of a kind or three of all three different kinds, and the meteors are wilds, then you're out. And so if you're either the last man standing or you're the first one to get all the way up the scorecard, it's just a little track on your card, you win. And anyway, so you just do that round after round after round. Takes about a half hour to play. And I would play it with my kids. Like I said, I have an 8-year-old, and I think she'd enjoy that. Trying to look it up on Board Game Geek, I think the weight was like 1.3. That's not it. It's made by the people who made Unstable Unicorns. If you've played that, let's see, 1.38. So yeah, like I said, real easy. We played it with 3 or 4 people. It seems like the more players you have, the better. But yeah, so I'm going to pick Happy Little Unicorns. And then the other thing I'm going to pick, I guess I have 2 more picks, and then shameless self-promotion that I won't take too long on. So the other pick that I have is my wife and I went and saw a movie on Monday, and so we went and saw Sound of Freedom, and they had this QR code to pay it forward, and you buy the tickets for somebody else to go see Sound of Freedom. And because we did that, they sent us free tickets to their next movie, which is called The Shift. And The Shift is kind of a sci-fi dystopian future movie. And I don't want to spoil too much of it. But effectively, you figure out pretty early that this guy is basically pulled from one reality in the multiverse to another. And he desperately wants to get back to his wife, who's the love of his life. And, and so he's, but he stood up to the bad guy. And so the bad guy wants him to pay for it. And so anyway, so it's got all that going on. It was a really, really, really good movie. I really liked it. As much as Sound of Freedom kind of pulls at your heartstrings and, gets you that emotional response because you just can't stand to see those kids trafficked, I liked this movie better. So, and this one's not got the social agenda to it as much, right? Of course, this one was also made by Angel Studios, where Sound of Freedom was acquired by Angel Studios and made by Fox Entertainment. So they are different flavors movies. But anyway, really, really good. So yeah, I'm going to pick that. Let me see if I can find a link to that. And then the last pick I have is I am starting up the premium stuff for Ruby Rogues. So the first thing that I'm going to just shout out about is you can get the premium version of Ruby Rogues, or you will be able to by this weekend as we record this. So it'll be out by the time you hear it. Just go to rubyrogues.com/premium or topenddevs.com/podcast/ruby-rogues/premium. And you'll be able to sign up. It's going to be through the end of December. It's going to be $5 a month. After that, it goes to $9 a month. And what you get is you get all the episodes in without the ads in them. So you can get them on our app, which is also going to be coming out, or you can get them in an RSS feed, and you'll get an email that when you sign up, you'll get the email that says, hey, here's your private RSS feed. Don't share it, blah, blah, blah. And so you'll be able to get it. And then the other thing that I'm doing is I'm starting up Rails clips, and it's kind of like Rails casts. So I'm going to be putting out a video or 2 every week. And the thing I want to do different from a lot of the others is I'm going to build an app. And so you'll get the at least the highlights of me building an app in Rails. Okay, I'm adding this feature. I'm pulling in this gem. We're going to put this together. Hey, I ran into this hang up, and it's going to, right? So we'll walk through all of that and get all that stuff together. You can get that at railsclips.com. And then the next level is Rails Geniuses. And each of these includes the previous. So Rails Geniuses includes Rails Clips and Ruby Rogues Premium. Ruby Rogues Premium also includes a call every month where we talk about these episodes were the ones that you liked. These ones were the ones you didn't. These are the things you want to learn more about. I'm going to try and get the hosts to be on that call too. So I'll try and get Dave and Valentino. But if they can't make it, then I'll be on, and we'll, but that way we can get you more of the guests you want, more of the topics you want. But you have to be a paid member in order to get access to that. So Ruby Geniuses is for the people who want kind of that quasi-weekly call. So we're going to do like breakout rooms and networking session one week. And then we'll have Alex come and actually walk us through using OpenAI. Or we'll have, somebody come on and say, hey, or it might be me, right? this is how I'm doing the deploys with Kamal, right? Or, whatever. And so you will have something that's more kind of a presentation, and then we'll also have like an open Q&A. Yeah, and maybe I'll bring in another expert. Maybe we'll get somebody from Test Double or Evil Martians or something come on and answer questions. We're going to do at least 3 calls a week. The plan right now is to do 3 calls a week. And we may add in a 4th. Or the other thing I'm looking at doing is, if you're a member of any of the Genius setups, because I'm also doing React and JavaScript, then the 4th week will be more of a career week, right? So it'll be, here's how you launch your podcast, or here's how you grow your podcast, or here's how you reach out to people and get to know them, or here's what I would do during the networking sessions the next time we have one, or here's how I would do a blog, here's how I would get involved in an open source project, right? Things that are going to raise your public profile or help you meet new people or know what to learn next. So those are the kinds of things that are going to go on on those other weeks. So that's what we're looking at. That's going to be at rubygenius.com. So anyway, you can go check out any of those levels and see what makes the most sense to you. All of those are basically going to be about half off through the end of the year. And then I'm going to raise the price to normal price. And if you get in after that, it's still going to be worth it, but you could have gotten a better deal. So anyway, that's what I'm working on. Alex, what are your picks?
So I have 2. One is the Ruby AI Builders Discord, which is a cool place where we discuss Ruby and AI. And Valentino, I think you're already on there, like you said. But yeah, it's
I just joined it.
Thank you. And yeah, you occasionally see some Ruby celebrities on there, like you guys and a couple of others. And yeah, my other pick would be Andrei Bondarev's LangChain RB gem. It's a little bit newer than Ruby OpenAI, but it's, in a way, it's a lot more ambitious because it's trying to bring together all the different AI APIs and do a lot of different things. Check it out. It's got a lot of different toolings, and it's growing quite fast, I think. So I'll put the link in the chat to the Discord and that gem. And that's my picks.
Awesome. All right, one last question. If people want to connect with you online, where do they find you?
Best place is on Twitter or X / Alex Rudall. I will put in the chat because it is hard to spell. That's me. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, this has been really fun. And now I have a whole bunch of stuff that I don't have time to play with that I'm going to wind up playing with. So, yeah, thanks for coming.
Thank you so much for having me. That was a real pleasure. Thank you both.
All right. Till next time, folks. Max out.